Semantic SEO Strategies for local SEO. Today I'm joined with Mike Lovatt, Paul Truscott and Luke Bastin, who are absolutely incredible when it comes down to semantic SEO in local SERPs. So let's get it started. Paul, I'm going to throw straight over to yourself. I'm going to throw you in the deep end.
Thanks, James. Thanks for that.
Local SEO specifically with regards to semantics. Obviously, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of people talking about semantic content networks, topical maps and stuff like that. But does it actually work when you're looking to do it in local SERPs?
It does, but what I've found is you've got to modify things a little bit. This will depend a bit on the niche that you're in, but a lot of the things that I'm in, right? Once you start looking at the subtopics, they don't get much in the way of search demand. So the idea of trying to use an outer section to build historic data doesn't work, right? So you can end up building a site that is too big, gets no traffic, or at least the outer section of the site gets no traffic. What you've done then is you've diluted the site focus of the site. You've then also increased the site radius of the site, which we know from the API leak is an issue. Right. So what I've found is with local, unless it's a topic, unless it's a niche where you can go like it's a lot of subcategories, maybe something like plumbing, for example, maybe you could do it because there's a lot of search volume on a lot of subcategories. Like things like boiler faults and whatnot, people search for crap like that. So maybe you could actually do it in that particular niche. But a lot of the stuff that I do, there isn't much search volume outside of the transactional stuff. Like there might be one or two informational queries that get a bit of volume, and then outside of that, there's nothing, because the people are really only interested in the service. So that's when I found it just doesn't work, because you end up having this giant network that gets no traffic, and you've just increased the site radius for no advantage whatsoever.
So is there anything that you're doing with semantics that does work?
Yeah, just narrow it down basically. So keep it to a core of pages. It's almost like getting rid of the outer section of the site. So you keep it really, really tight. I'm a lot more focused now, excuse the pun, on site focus, right? So I want to keep the focus of the site not necessarily narrow, but laser targeted on what the niche is, and then make sure that I'll use cosine similarity. I know that Google's using chamfer similarity now a lot because of the paragraph indexing and all that stuff, but I'm not sure how much of that is being used in local, because they're expensive algos to run. So I'm on the fence about whether they're really using this in the local space. But I want to look at the cosine similarity between the pages I'm creating and the query, the query vector. So the distance between those two vectors, and then make sure that all my pages are as close as they can be to the query vector. I don't want to go too far away from it, and then you're going to guarantee that the site focus and the site radius are nice and tight. That seems to be working really well in combination, in tandem with some old-fashioned stuff, which is like the TF-IDF. Like we discussed this before, BM25. That still works in local, at least. Like this idea that people say, they don't use keywords at all anymore. I'm not finding that, not in local. Like if you don't use your keywords on the page, I'm not seeing anything ranking.
Yeah. What about you, Luke? Is there anything that you're seeing specifically in local SEO with regards to semantic SEO strategies?
Yeah, I would say pretty much everything Paul said there I'm seeing as well. I agree with most of it. I'd say I've probably got less of a focus on keywords than Paul does. I'd go from very much an entity perspective when trying to build that site out. But like two things which I see exacerbating the problems that Paul was talking about is the targeting of the site not being based on the right kind of hyponym, the right overall category. See lots of websites where if they're in a certain space, say it's like roofing, just to pick an example we all probably know about, that they might try and think, well, roofing services is the main thrust of this site. I'm going to kind of target roofing services, and maybe that is a keyword approach, but in that case, you're kind of overlooking so much of the market, because there's all the repair, there's the maintenance. It's not the right kind of top level category to be going for. Probably roofing contractor or roofing maintenance, which covers all those different subcategories, is a better option. So not picking the right hypernym is one thing, and then the other thing is probably trying to be too broad on informational pages. That's pretty much what Paul said. So lots of people do want that kind of informational focus as well as transactional, and I don't see too much harm with that, because it could be, SEO could be part of a more joined up strategy to build email lists or do things which are offline and so on. So there could be reasons for it, but again, if you get that too diluted, then that can water down the site overall. And in some markets it's really dangerous as well. Like, again, sticking to roofing because it's just the same example, you can easily stray into things like guttering, window repair, stuff that just is tangential to but not within roofing, and water the whole site down. So yeah, those are the two big kind of traps I see over and above what Paul was saying.
Yeah, and then what about you, Mike? What are you doing with regards to semantic SEO? Obviously, I know you're doing a lot more than just local. You're doing a lot of like iGaming and stuff like that. But what have you seen in local work with semantic SEO strategies?
One of the things that Paul touched on was like site focus. So one thing that I've definitely seen over the last few years is, like years ago, everyone was talking about content marketing. So if you're a local dentist or a roofer, then you have a blog or a guide section and you add a lot of content. The problem is then like how many dentists there are in, say, like the UK or the USA. They're all going to end up with quite similar blog posts over time. Maybe not specific to the local area, just, I don't know, whether it's the cost of treatment or how something works or what it involves. There's going to be a lot of similarity. So how are you meant to stand out? I found with, like, I had a national e-commerce client. So we'd done that. We'd added loads of content. Like, the category pages themselves were okay, but rather than spending the money on conversion rate optimization or link building or some sort of external signals, which we know is important with the third-party corroboration, they just went and spent loads of money on getting more blog posts, because I guess that's like a KPI for some people. Is just, we want to publish 15 articles a month. And so they covered like every kind of entity and attribute within their niche that was like sort of like ideas, and then they could get traffic from Pinterest, which normally you would think that would work fine, especially if it was an informational site. So what it was is they were selling like flooring and things like that, and so then they would add loads of content relating to flooring ideas that then spanned into like other interior designs. So it would be like, I don't know, white, like red kitchen with white floor tile ideas and inspiration. And so then in the end, like that, there's so many different permutations of that they ended up like, I don't know, say like 250 blog posts or something, and they're all pretty good. But I do think that skews the site focus then from being an e-commerce site where they're selling stuff to being more of a guide with a shop on the side. So I think like there's probably going to be like a lot of local sites where they might have like one core service that they have like 3 pages for the different variety, whether it's like new roof installation or roof repair or something like that. Then if you've got like 100 blog posts on like roofing in general, is that going to skew your site focus away from being like an actual local business as opposed to being like a reference point? So I do think there is something in that. And years ago we obviously used to use, and we still do use, backlinks as a way of validating how real something is. And then as SEOs, we ruined that by spamming the internet. So then writing quality content became more of a way of validating things. But now that there's enough freelance writers and AI around to produce a huge amount of content, I think now like traffic becomes more of a validation. So I think you've got a local site and like 95% of your traffic is going to blog posts, and that in itself is validating you as more of an informational website rather than a local business. And I've seen that play out. I've seen it play out in like my affiliate site as well, where years ago people thought, oh, Google's going after affiliate sites, so we need to add non-commercial pages too. So you're adding blog posts and guides. I did that with my affiliate site. I had like 250 pages of just guides, which then dwarfed the actual main core page of the topical map that I wanted to rank. So I end up, instead of looking like an affiliate, like a review site or a comparison site, looking more like an educational guide that wants to make money through the ads. And then you see that the main keywords that you do want to get ranked then suffer, despite there being internal links and good signals going through, if 90% of the traffic is validating your site as like an educational resource, then I do think that skews it in Google's eyes. So I'd say the same in local, where if all the traffic and all the focus is on the outer pages of the topical map rather than the core pages, is that going to skew site focus into being more of a reference point rather than someone who's the go-to guy to get your roof repaired in the local area?
Yeah, it's crazy that you all talk about the site focus and the site radius and trying to keep it as like on point as it can be, because it kind of does go against a little bit of Corey's methodology of go like wide. And I know he says you can go wide or you can go deep, and I think presuming you're all saying stay narrow and go deep on that one topic, don't really like go for all the additional terms and stuff. But if there's one key takeaway for someone who's watching this, they're in local SEO, they're thinking they need to understand semantic SEO more, what's one key takeaway for someone listening or watching this that you could say, if I was you, if you're in local SEO, this is what I would be doing with regards to semantics? Like Paul, you mentioned BM25, TF-RDF and stuff like that. Is there anything on that you would be doing? People have said previously to use like Surfer SEO, Market Moves, onpage.ai. Is there any tools that anyone's using that can help them semantically get in the entities like you've mentioned, Luke? Like what one key takeaway would you give to someone who's got a local site that wants to improve semantic SEO?
For me, it would be geotopical and geocontextualizing the content, which we can do so easily now with AI that we couldn't easily do before. So think in terms of, if you were really working in that place, if you really went out and did jobs in that place, what do you know about that area that somebody who doesn't do that wouldn't know? And trying to link your service with how it's affected by where you perform it. So that could be local bylaws, local constraints, local regulations, that kind of thing. That's particularly working extraordinarily well for pushing the GMB. So the content on the site, particularly the landing page, pushes that back to the GMB, works like gangbusters now. And that used to be really hard to do.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing I've found which has made the biggest difference is getting really well researched and deep on what the attributes are, the commercial attributes for that particular market. So, you know, if you have a business which is in, say, the solar panel space, again, just thinking of examples where I can give real examples of what I've found. A lot of those services, so it kind of touches on what Paul was talking about, but more on the service side than the location side. One of the biggest things is credit. You know, do you offer financing as a business? It's amazing the amount of businesses that pay lip service or just don't even mention the fact that finance is available or tax credits are available for certain types of solar solution. But it's those commercial attributes and like where they are on the page that can really categorize a website in the right way. So yeah, I would say understand and prioritize the commercial attributes.
And what about you, Mike?
Similar to what Paul said, by being hyper geospecific, anyone can spin up like a local SEO site about roofing or plumbing or something like that. But think like some web browsers are going to have specific questions like, what month of the year can they get their roof done? And in certain parts of the world, it's going to be impossible in certain months due to monsoon rain, wind, snow, etc. So being hyper specific. And then there's like accessibility. Like some people live on the edge of a mountain, and so if you just got really generic advice like, yeah, we'll come visit you any day of the week, and then I don't know, for some people they might be on a small island that's only available by car ferry twice a week or something like that. So it's like getting those just by covering that ground, you'll get those hyper specific attributes covered. The best way to think about it is, someone once said to me that if like the best way to fill out your site with decent content that's really specific to your niches, if you imagine like every server in the world went down except for yours, and ChatGPT could only index your website, and so that someone had a question about roofing, and ChatGPT had indexed your website, and they said, oh, how much is it going to cost to get my roof repaired, or what times of the year can I get my roof repaired, then would the LLM be able to answer the user's query just based on your
That's a
site alone.
really good way of looking at it.
For me, I've had quite a lot of interesting conversations with Corey, who obviously all four of us know very, very well. And I was trying to play devil's advocate, which I'm sure all three of you know that I love to have a good debate.
Yeah.
To try and balance them things up. And the biggest one for me was I was trying to tell Corey that his methodology does not work in local. And I was debating with him left, right, and centre and saying, it doesn't work in local. I feel like you go too informational and it doesn't work. And then he actually sat down with me and he went through a load of different things that I didn't know and I don't hear a lot of people talk about. And it was about wasteful domains is what he called it, right? And it's other domains that he owns, right? So you could call it a PBN. I would call it a PBN, right? But Mike, where you spoke about them, let's say talking about informational based terms, he would still go and do a topical map and map out a semantic content network. But if he felt that there wasn't much outer section like you spoke about, Paul, if he felt that that shouldn't be on his main transactional monetary kind of website, he would still create a whole topical map and he would then define this goes on the site, this goes off the site. And he has an off-page topical map, which is what I've been saying for ages, like, why don't you do an off-page topical map? You need to do an off-page topical map for the third-party corroboration that's coming back to the site. And he does do one, and he calls it wasteful domains. I'm like, I've never heard you talk about wasteful domains before. And that's what he does. So he'll still do the topical map. He defines what goes on the site, what goes off the site, exactly what you're talking about there with site radius, site focus.
Yeah.
He keeps that focus. He keeps that radius. He makes certain he doesn't just kind of fan too far away. But does he want to cover that topic? Yes, he does. That goes on a different domain, and it points back to them. When you then say, oh, by the way, you might need to do this, this, and this, and if you're looking for a contractor that can do it, here's the best company, and it points back to it. And I thought that was genius when he told me, because I've been trying to debate with him that his methodology of these informational based articles are not good enough, and he's like, still want to cover it and still want to cover it with the brand being connected to those topics. He called it wasteful domains. I call it off-page topical maps, whatever you want to call it. Jason Barnard calls it third-party corroboration, which we all talk about and stuff like that. But for me, that was the bit that was like, oh, okay, now I get it. And it does fall in line with everything of what you're saying there.
Yeah.
It covers all the entity attributes. Your site focus score is brilliant. Everything, the radius of it is all bang on. Because I'm exactly the same as what you're saying there, Paul and Luke. Like, stay on topic being transactional. Mike, you were saying if you go too far away from a blog, it becomes more informational. Does that dilute your main transactional pages? Yes, I've always found that it does, like you've been saying. And I feel that this kind of method is... You've all done the course. Have you ever heard of Corey talking about that?
Not using those words, but conceptually,
No.
yeah. And it's pretty much a summary of what we've all been saying in different parts today. Yeah, I've seen in the wild, I've seen people use subdomains instead of like wasteful domains as a completely different domain, and it probably has a similar technical effect. HubSpot, going back a few years, if you didn't have a website that was a HubSpot website, but you wanted to hook up HubSpot's CRM to your website, you used to have the blog as a subdomain. I don't know if that's still the case. I've not looked at it for a couple of years, but that system used to work fairly well from a blogging perspective. And I think, I didn't know this at the time, this would have been like 6 years ago last time I looked at it, but that would make sense to me. Why? Because it's a subdomain and you've got this off-page, on-page dynamic.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone who's watching this, hope you like the topic about semantic SEO, specifically for the local SERPs and for local SEO. Paul, Mike and Luke, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'll speak to you again soon.